play it for now. Get rid of it.
And you're on.
So welcome, this is the October 19th meeting of the Finance Board. We're starting a little bit late because we needed to wait till we had quorum for our meeting, so that has just happened, and now here we are. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5:52 PM. And our first agenda item is the Pentucket Regional Agreement and the State of the School District meeting. And I think that this is going to be a recurring, ongoing discussion on this board. With the school budget being 65% of our budget, we saw last year that there was a push for an override. It really made for a lot of last-minute kind of scrambling with the override, then the override failed. So it really took over, I feel, a large portion of planning the budget. And so we are working on it, trying to get as much ahead of it as we can this year. So there was a meeting that Sarah might want to, we talked about this a little bit last week, last meeting, but that meeting was not televised, so just to bring everybody up to speed, if you want to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing with the other member communities of the Pentucket District.
Sure. The Finance Board of Merrimack, Groveland, West Newbury, the Board of Selectmen of Groveland, Merrimack, West Newbury, all the town administrators all met. My gosh, it feels like 2 months ago at this point. 2 months ago, it was August. To talk about the regional agreement, since it's coming up this year for us to re-sign it, either extend it and leave it as is, or make any changes. I think after we reviewed it and we decided that some changes need to be made, nothing substantial, nothing that isn't, certain things that need to be followed that may not be currently. Tighten up some wording and making sure that we're covering, kind of just making sure that we are, I don't want to phrase this. Just there's certain things that aren't super clear for each of the towns, and that we want to move forward and make those changes. So they're having a meeting November 1st. The school has invited us to come to that meeting. I think this will be a topic of conversation. So I think if we have any points that we want to make, that we should probably talk about that and review that. I can go over some of those points that we talked about in the meeting, and we can go from there if we would like.
You're talking there's certain ambiguities within the agreement that need more definition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Where is the regional agreement posted?
On the school's website.
On the school's website?
Yeah.
So, how many pages is it roughly, would you say?
10.
10 pages. So we should all have some level of familiarity with the details of the agreement, especially going into this season and knowing that, I know that there's a meeting, West Newbury is having a meeting with their Board of Selectmen, their Finance Board, reviewing their perspective of it. That meeting, that State of the School District meeting that Sarah just referred to, that's Tuesday, November 1st, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the new middle high school. And it's a presentation from the superintendent and the business manager, I would expect, to the Pentucket School Committee and the boards of selectmen of the 3-member towns. They also sent an email to make sure that I shared it with this board, but having kids in the school district, I also received an email from the school today about that. So I'm guessing that they may have invited the larger school community to it as well. So that during the new business, the message that the school sent out to members today just briefly reads, during the new business portion of their agenda, the school committee will be joined by each of the boards of selectmen from Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury to hear about the past, present, and future of the Pentucket Regional School District. The presentation will be framed around 3 major categories: academics, budget, and facilities. Additionally, the group will hear about some of the challenges currently facing all public school districts and, of course, Pentucket. The event will be in the main atrium of the new middle high school building, and parking is available in that first lot by the street. And also, just to give a little bit of background, just what, at a very, very high level, what's important to remember is that Proposition 2.5 restricts our annual tax increases to 2.5%. And the school budget, which is 65% of our budget, historically, over the last 5 years, has been right around 3%. Fiscal year '22, it was over 5.25%. Last year, the override that we pushed for was going to be, I think, a 6.25% override, increase in the annual operating budget. That does not include the capital assessment. So knowing that we have constraints on our revenues, we just need to make sure that we stay on top of this very large portion of our town's operating budget, and really balance the priorities of the school, the town, and the town's current operating budget and the town's future as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of competing priorities for a certain amount of resources that are really, a defined amount of resources. There's only so much that we can have, and it becomes a challenge to really allocate those resources as equitably, as appropriately as we can with all of the competing resources. So I'm really glad that we're working with the school this early in the budget season. I'm glad that we are getting ahead of it and that we can have some, hopefully, productive conversations about our priorities, the school's priorities, all of our constraints. And, I hope that last year, what I kept asking is that we could just have an open dialogue with the school, and I'm glad to see that starting this early, and I hope that we can be an active part of the budget process this year, so that I really would like the school committee, particularly Groveland's members of the school committee, to see the full picture, to see our town's revenues, our town's budget, and what our town is seeking for wants and needs versus the school, and understand that there's a difficult equation there. But the new school took occupancy this fall. Bill O'Neill, who's now a member of our finance board, worked hard on that building committee. I have to commend everybody. It's a beautiful school. There's a real sense of pride, and it's great to see. And I know that, we as a community very much do support the school. I've always been very involved with the school. Melissa's involved in school council, Bagnell Council, school council. And so there's a lot of support from everybody that's on this board. Sarah's been attending these extra meetings and working with, other interested parties. So there's a lot of support on this board, and I hope that we can really work cooperatively and make sure that we can really push forward in a productive way. So that's the regional agreement. I would encourage anybody that wants to read it. I read it last year, but I think I need to reread it again to read the regional agreement that's posted on the school's website. And that's just the regional agreement between the three member towns, Groveland, West Newbury, and Merrimack. The second item on our agenda tonight is.
Before you
Oh,
continue.
sorry.
Can we just make sure we put this on next month's budget, so then, next month's agenda, so we can talk about it, and hopefully we can all read it, and if we have any concerns or points that we want to talk about, that everybody can bring
Yeah.
that to the table?
Yeah,
Just so if we have to report anything back, we do it early on.
Yeah.
Because I know West Newbury did it the beginning of this month already.
did what?
They met, so the finance board and the board of selectmen, they met like the
think-
last week of September, the 27th, so they met, yeah, on the 28th.
Is it easy to find on their website, or?
Yeah, if not, I'll email it to you. I'll send it over.
Sometimes it,
Yeah.
not so easy to find things navigating through their website.
Yeah. Sure, that's a good point, thank you. Anything else on regional agreement and the state of the school district? I will be at that meeting on November 1st. And probably we should also talk about, between us, we should try to have, I do try to watch, if not attend, the school committee meetings. I did last spring during budget season, but we should be making a point to make sure that we're monitoring and that so that our information is flowing back and forth as well. So we can talk about that going forward, too.
As far as the regional agreement, when does it expire?
So it doesn't, it will just roll over if we don't do anything with it.
So it has an expiration date, and if not re-agreed upon or re-amended, then it extends for, is it similar to what we did with the union contract, where we didn't have an agreement, so we were basically ran with the existing contract until a new one was created?
Yeah, so it was signed in May/June of 2019, so.
3-year agreement?
Yeah. It says that this agreement shall be reviewed every 3 years by a group comprised of, and it goes into like who should review it. If they want to make a task force, which we have not done, we think we don't need to get into that level of detail, but I think we can,
Okay, I can read the rest.
yeah.
I won't bore anybody.
No, but there's the dates at the top that says, like, when we changed it and when we haven't. So it says agreement of, and then sometimes it's every 5 years, sometimes it's different. It's not, we renewed it in 2012 to 2014, that's 2 years, So we obviously made changes, but then from 2014 to 2019, there was no changes, that's 5 years. So different, like that. So.
Good?
Good.
Let's go. The next item on the agenda for tonight was the fiscal year, I have 23, but I meant 22, didn't I? Year-end status. So, closing out our last fiscal year. And last meeting, our town accountant, Ellen, was here, and she gave us a bit of an update as far as timing goes and as far as closing the books and setting the tax rate. And has there been a change, or is that still going according to schedule that you're aware of?
Yes, I did touch base with Ellen today, and I asked for her to provide an update. She said that essentially they are moving forward. They had completed the bill and payroll warrants. They are closing out the books with the water and sewer. They are looking at special revenue funds. They're close to finishing out those. They are looking to update the statement of indebtedness, so that we're moving forward with being able to set our tax rate. They are trying to get everything done essentially with the state reporting and the account reconciliations before Thanksgiving, and that will depend on a couple of the outside factors as she discussed at the last meeting, but otherwise she's still on schedule, and she really is trying to get this done mid to late November.
Which is pretty in line with past years. What
Very
has
much so.
happened is right around the same time, so, all right, great. And other than that, business as usual, nothing else has come up, there's been nothing else of concern or anything like that?
Nope, there's
Okay.
only the hiccups, like we said, like we're trying to close out the year, set the tax rate, and then bills are due this week. So everything gets put on hold today, and you can't touch anything because you got to process the bills. So it's kind of like one of those things, or something comes up, or somebody comes in and interrupts. So other than those basic hiccups that, interrupt the daily flow, everything's going smoothly, and we haven't
Like
seen
doing
any-
business?
Exactly.
Okay.
I guess I never paid attention before. Does it really take 5 months to close the year?
I can bring in Ellen and we can have a further conversation about the schedule. I don't personally close out the books, but everything that we have to do and everything that we're supposed to be doing, we're doing. So I think there is a process in terms of the different accounts that we have before us and what's required. And I know even just working with her the other day about reconciling the police details and making sure we have all of those and making sure we have the receipts and that we paid the employees what we were supposed to and we took in the money that we were supposed to. So the various accounts that we have and the various departments and trying to make sure that things were reported based upon what she's getting from the treasurer collector side and based upon what she's seeing on her side and making sure that all works. It is a process.
Oh, let's not, I've been through year ends countless years. SEC reporting, I get it all. I'm just wondering, is that typical of all towns that it takes roughly 5 months to close out the year? It's just a curiosity question.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely look if we're in line with other communities. I don't mind following up.
Yeah, I mean, if the average community can close their books in, say, 3, but we take 2 months beyond that, then we ought to say, well, how can they do it? Do they have more staff? Do they have more automation? What do they have if the typical average town can close, in 3 as opposed to 5? I'm just wondering, is there, is this typical of all towns that, the year closes in June 30th, and you don't really get year-end financials until, Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving, I mean, who's looking at anything at Thanksgiving, right? And then you're into the holidays, and then it's New Year's, and then, geez, by the time you sit down, not much to talk about anymore. It's so
I would
passé.
100% imagine in small communities like ours that it's definitely along the same path that we are going through. And we also had the transition period, at least with this year, and we were trying to get things done a lot sooner with the whole fact that we had to go back in our accounts because of the treasurer collector not being there, coming back and all that, and being 2 months behind. And they were able to close out and reconcile those accounts relatively quickly with the staff that we had, and having the new assistant treasurer collector, and then also having Mary Beth, who was the clerk, come in last year and help us kind of get us to where we are. We're still not 100% caught up, but we're pretty close based upon where we were last year. So I
Yeah,
think,
and I don't want to, I'm not looking to place blame or point fingers. Honestly, I could care less. I'm just wondering, is that typical? And, what is the typical time for, other communities out there? Just a curiosity factor.
yeah,
you know,
I can definitely
I-
follow up.
And I can understand mitigating factors, extenuating circumstances, yada, yada, yada. I mean,
Okay.
Wasn't Ellen's hope that it's early if she gets the tax rate set by like November 1st? Isn't that early? Wasn't that?
She was trying to get it done early, but the other issue with the tax rate is that the valuations play into that as well. And so the company that we contract with, with the assessing department, are not doing the valuations yet, or they're just about starting the evaluation. So that comes in later. So that pushes us back, because without that data, we can't submit the tax recap form. It's all contingent upon that data. So there are other factors at play that, contract with outside vendors that help us do some of that work that is stalling our schedule in terms of tax recap, not necessarily year-end close, but with recap for sure.
Good. So, thank you. The next item was the capital plan. And turn that mic back on. Where that stands, last meeting, you talked about the outline for it. You were sending out requests to the departments, and they were due back the end
November
of this,
1st.
yeah, the end of this month.
So I was able to work a little bit more on getting a capital plan that I think will be a lot more useful for the town moving forward than in prior years. It still kind of follows the same format in the sense that you'll have your summary page of all the requests that are being there for the 5 years, and then having a 10-year outlook. And then in addition to that, you'll find that there'll be debt information showing you what the outstanding debt is, what the initial project debt was, and the total debt that we're carrying currently, so that we can then work with Hilltop Securities and figuring out exactly how we can roll into that debt, some of these newer projects, so that we can continue to upgrade our equipment and our project without really feeling the additional hurt with the bonds, the debt that we're already carrying. So then I have other lists with items under $10,000 that is not the threshold of our capital plan, but things that we need to be taking into consideration because could lead down the road to larger issues. We have our fleet inventory, our equipment inventory. I've asked all the departments to come back with condition of their equipment and things that they are looking for to add. We have our properties inventory, so we did a basic sweep of our properties from the assessment that Denise Domkowski did back with Dude Solutions, where they came in and did a whole asset management plan. So we went back and we took a closer look at that, and we tried to identify some of the projects that were important that had not necessarily been recognized or put in a list of some sort. And, you know, they put together an amazing actual package, but nobody's really going to go back to the shelf and look at that and like, oh, what was that, you know, project
Right.
that they wanted us to do? So we were trying to take those items and put them in like a spreadsheet with a capital plan, so that you're always constantly being reminded that these are things that we really need to be focusing on, specifically with our municipal buildings. Then I've also added another sheet for the Bagnell School, hoping to get their capital plan earlier than we have had in previous years. I did have a meeting with the town administrator in Merrimack and the town administrator in West Newbury, as well as Dr. Bartholomew and Greg LeBrecq. And we were talking some of those initial concerns as we had discussed about the regional agreement, one of them being that we were supposed to get their capital plan a lot sooner. Also, that their capital plan was not addressing what was listed in the regional agreement, which was 5 years. They noted that as being a flaw, so that they were going to get that information to us sooner. So I'm hopeful to get that from the Bagnell standpoint, so that I can also include that as part of our capital plan. I mean, historically, we've always had like a set $75,000 like to address things, but to actually have that incorporated a little bit more thoroughly with ours, I think would be a lot more useful. And then the other sheets are all specific to project details of those that had been submitted by the departments this year. So, you know, the library is experiencing a lot of issues with their HVAC system. It's undersized, it's causing a lot of moisture in there. Obviously, that's the last thing you want in a library. So it's causing issues with their flooring. So there's like the detail sheet, which tells you what their project funding is being requested for, what the life of the project is, a little bit of the description. It shows you a photo, so it kind of gives you like some extra visual detail if after looking at the summary you're like, well, why would we need to get an HVAC system? What's that about? So I'm pretty close to wrapping it up. I have a few more projects I want to get concrete quotes for. One of the things I did push back on the departments is this is not like a placeholder list. So, you know, there's many projects that we want to accomplish and like, oh, that'd be a great idea. But unless you have concrete plans and or specifications or an estimate that we can work with, then it really is not going to be beneficial to us, because what is going to happen is it's like, oh yeah, well, you said you needed this, so $600,000, sure, why not? But what happens when you go up for engineering and you still need $45,000 for engineering plans, and the cost of the project is actually $1 million? Like, that really doesn't help us at all. So
Right.
there was a couple of people who had done that, and I was kind of like, well, let's take a step back. If you want this to be something that's going to be an actual plan that people are going to do something with, then we need to be mindful of that. So it really is taking shape, and I am really proud of it. And I'm, again, hoping to work with Hilltop Securities to put more of that debt focus on what we're proposing, so that they can give us a better understanding of what, you know, is a healthy level of debt to carry forward, and how we can do that thoughtfully.
Did the school think that they could get us the 5-year capital plan before January 15th?
Yes.
So, but based on our agreement, our regional agreement, now, it says January 15th, so I just didn't know if they thought that that was a good timeline, or if we needed to change that to
So we had
later or
talked,
earlier.
we had talked about it being earlier just because the towns are required to come up with their capital plans earlier. Both Merrimack and West Newbury noted that, you know, we need to have our, you know, capital plans almost finalized before December, and we're not getting yours until January, so that doesn't really allow us to incorporate that into our planning, at least for our elementary schools specifically, which we have the ownership of and the burden of making sure that they're in good working condition. So they didn't seem to push back at it at all. I mean, they are slightly understaffed in terms of their facilities. Bob Davenport is great. He does a really great job. But trying to have him help with the new school and all the other schools, and then have him sit down and put together a list and then go back, because one of our complaints too was we've provided monies to this school to help with, you know, the asbestos and other things, but we don't really know, have they been completed yet? Like, where are we in the process? Where's our update? And that was one of the requests that we made as well, and I believe that they're working on putting that together. So I thought it was a very productive conversation, and I agree, Sarah, that they'll be more receptive to providing that information in the future, earlier than what it has historically been and or said in the regional agreement.
The $5,000 threshold you're referring to is specific to what?
What, 5,000?
I thought you said 5,000.
So we have for our capital improvement plan and our bylaw, it specifically says $10,000.
Right. I thought you're talking about the school and the elementary schools. Did you not just say 5,000 about something? I thought,
Even the, you know, the regional agreement.
I believe it to be
Oh,
10,000, which
yeah.
is why I was asking. I thought you had said 5,000, and I,
No, it's 10,000, yeah.
Okay.
And 10,000 for what we would be required to cover for any improvement. I mean, over 10,000, anything we would be required, under 10,000 would be something that the district would need to cover. But we had talked about increasing that threshold as well.
To 20.
And I believe that even from our capital planning standpoint, we should be talking about that, because nowadays, I mean, the threshold should be at least 20. There's a lot of projects that don't necessarily need to be vetted by a capital plan that need to be implemented, that doesn't really impact the finances as greatly as those projects.
in addition to the 10 or the 20,000, is there a useful life? Isn't there a time
That's correct.
threshold as well?
There's
Is
a
it-
threshold for price, and there's a threshold for useful life, and I think there's one other item actually included in that as well. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was price, threshold, and that one other item.
And certainly our ARPA funding has helped us get a little bit in front of some of these major capital expenditures. So, so hopefully our capital plan is going to shape up to be something that we can manage. But again, it's going to be, I'm sure, an evolving list of needs versus wants versus priorities versus all of the competing concerns.
So it was, the other one, it was have a useful life of no less than 3 years, cost no less than $10,000, for which the town is authorized to borrow funds.
Authorized borrow. And only 3 years. I had 5 in my mind. So, okay. That sounds great. I think it's really great to have this become sort of a living document with the backup, with the priorities, with the 5 and the 10. Is there another ARPA allocation coming out at some point, or we have?
It's funny you say that. Somebody had mentioned it again, and I have not yet to see anything.
You haven't seen anything,
We
okay.
received our full allocation, so we were excited when we saw that come in, and that last final payment came in, I think, around September. But there was no, like, in addition to the 2 million that we received.
There's no
that we
other
were
fund, so
getting.
this is
But
it.
somebody had mentioned that too, and I was like, I don't know if it's just a misunderstanding of whether or not there was gonna be, that the final allocation was given in September, or
Maybe.
that even additional funds on top of that were gonna be allocated. And
So they
we'll
actually give you the allocation. You have it.
have the money.
That's kind of interesting. I would think that it was an allocation promised to us that we have to sort of submit for and then have. I wouldn't know that they would just give the funds out to all the
It wasn't like
communities.
the CARES Act, which was more of a reimbursement kind of
Right.
thing. It was like a grant, so almost like it's like, here you go. Make sure you do well, because we will audit you.
No. Very good.
But maybe I should incorporate that as part of the plan too, as identifying the projects that we have funded recently, specifically with the ARPA funds.
I
and
think that
anything
would
else.
be a great addition to the plan because it would make a more comprehensive view of departments and really town causes that are getting funds and attention.
And that's important, in my personal opinion, because I think a lot of departments look at it like that too, unfortunately, like, well, they got this and I didn't get this.
Right.
And, you know,
Right.
it does give you an opportunity to then put together some type of visual thing to be like, well, this is
Yeah.
how much was allocated to this area and this is how much was allocated to that area, and give some people some more broader view perspective. So I think
Yeah.
that would be a good idea as well.
And I don't think the source of the funding matters. Like, if it was still a capital, part of the capital plan, the fact that it came from ARPA versus, you know, revenue, it's irrelevant.
Right. To me, it's all taxpayer dollars. I have heard some people refer to it that it's like free money and that it's just there and it's not costing our taxpayers anything. To me, it's all taxpayer dollars. It's all dollars that have been funded through our federal or local taxes, and it's also whatever is from ARPA is reallocated to the town's needs is local town tax dollars that we're not going to otherwise need to divert to that particular cause. So to me, it's all taxpayer dollars, and it's all for the benefit of our residents, and something that I just feel strongly that every decision needs to really be made in context of the whole town budget, priority, goals, current, future, all that. Anyway, so that's good news. Thank you. I'm excited to see this plan come into shape. That'll be great. The next item we had, and we have another meeting in this room at 7 o'clock, so we don't really have that many more items, but we'll stay on point. The preliminary, what's that? Thought it was 7 o'clock. Is it 7:30?
It's 7.
7 o'clock. The preliminary fiscal year '24 budget review schedule, Rebecca gave us at our last meeting her outline. I followed up with a draft that I emailed out to this group when I sent out our agenda, as far as the department budget reviews go, and it's the almost exact same department budget review outline that we used last year, which I think was based off of the year before. And what we do is we just try to balance as far as time goes and as far as what departments generally have their budgets done on the earlier side of the budget process through as time goes on, and maybe employees that would work on more than one budget. We just try to organize them together to just be considerate of everybody's time. The email draft that I sent out to everybody, I just made I'm suggesting two very minor modifications, and that's, some of them were 20 minutes, some were 30 minutes, and I just made them all 30 minutes to try to just, so they're all half an hour blocks. I think that's just going to be easier. Even if they don't take the full 30 minutes, which many departments don't, we'll still just have the half-hour allotments in there, and then we'll have a little bit of time to, switch in and out from department to department. And when there is time left in a block, then we generally have other business to discuss, and we can just backfill that. We can also backfill it with the list of budgets that the finance director reports to us. So, well, actually, this one I should take off. So that's that. This draft also, based on last year, has the two schools on April 5th. I think we're just going to know that we're going to be meeting with the school in advance, and so I'm also suggesting that we take the school off of that April 5th meeting, and I'm just going to leave that meeting as a placeholder. We'll just hold it because according to my calendar, if the town meeting, and I'll add this to the draft, and it'll be like a working document, I'll send it out to everybody, but right now, the town meeting is scheduled for April 24th. The warrant needs to be posted 2 weeks prior to that, which would be April 10th, which is a Monday, so I'm expecting that we're going to want our warrant finalized on Friday, April 7th, for posting. So that last meeting that we have on Wednesday, April 5th, will just be a placeholder in case we need to make any follow-up final votes before the warrant gets posted and finalized. You'll recall last year, we didn't have that luxury. We didn't have time to post a meeting in between the vote when the school override did not pass to the town meeting, so we had to modify on the town meeting floor the budget that we proposed. We had sort of two proposed budgets ready to queue up. So I think oftentimes there are last-minute votes and just little loose ends that so we'll hold that last meeting for that. So April 5th will be a placeholder. I'll revise that. I'll send this back out again. And everybody can put April 24th on their calendar for the annual town meeting. We need 100 registered voters there.
Oh, boy.
The town meeting is the body who votes on all of the business that the town presents in the warrant, which is the majority of the business that the town conducts over the course of the next year. So our budget gets voted by the annual meeting. The warrant articles, all of the questions about really various initiatives is all voted at the town meeting. It's a really important meeting, and it's an important body of people who have a lot of authority over what goes on in the town, so.
The bottom line is decisions are made by people that show up.
Decisions are made by people that show
If
up.
you don't show up, and the decision is made that you don't like, too bad. You lose. Show up. Have your voice be heard.
Yep. The next item, we're good on the budget plans so far? The next item was, I've had it as a placeholder for several meetings now, the DLS Financial Management Review. We haven't heard back from them yet, maybe a couple little preliminary discussions, but I think I will send our representative an email this week and just see how it's going and make myself available if there were any sort of, I'm certain that if there were any follow-up questions, they would reach out to us. But maybe just to sort of get it back up to the top of the pile and just offer to have any conversations about that, that would be good. Certainly, we want to have that review in advance of our budget season for this year. Or know what considerations they have for us to keep in mind, so that would be helpful. Meeting minutes, Melissa sent out her very professional and excellent minutes, as always. We're very proud of our minute taker. Oh, one other thing the minutes from September 21st, which is our last meeting, shows Meadow Stokes as being absent, and she did send us an email saying that she has had some other obligations that she didn't expect, and she is not going to continue on this board. So, and recall this meeting started a few minutes late because we didn't have a fourth person for quorum, because we have people that work, people that commute. I know it's really hard to get here, and I appreciate everybody that's on this board, but we do have a couple of open slots. So if anybody wants to participate, you don't need experience. You just need to have some sort of appreciation and concern for the town that we live in. And we welcome new members, and we would love to have a couple of new members, particularly in advance of budget season, because if we don't have enough members and we have to cancel a meeting when we have all of our departments lined up to be here and meet with us, that's just something that we really try to avoid. That's,
Wasted time and energy.
I think it's a really hard thing to do on people's time.
I have a question. I was appointed as an alternate. Do I get a promotion now?
My understanding is if you would like one, we would need to go back before the Board of Selectmen and make you an appointed non-alternate member, or to appoint you to that seat that has now become vacant.
Well, I think that would be a joy, don't you?
I can put that on the, well, I can double check with the chair and put that on the agenda.
We would appreciate that.
Absolutely. I mean, you need members, you need volunteers. I mean, can't say how ridiculous it is to turn down volunteers, but it's happened before.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I know public service isn't always easy, but I will say that I get a lot of, I'm proud to be able to volunteer for our town, and I know that towns function only via volunteerism. The Board of Selectmen is all volunteer, our board is all of our boards and committees. We have paid town employees, but all of the town's committees and advisory committees are all based on volunteers. And so, I am grateful for all of the volunteers that we have, and I appreciate, I mean, I might be sort of biased, but I do think that our board has really great volunteers. And I think that we have a group that has got several years of tenure, and I'm proud of that. And I think that we work as a very respectful, cooperative board. I very much enjoy working with our town administrator, and I'm excited to see how this budget season, I think it's going to improve over last year, which was an improvement over the year before. And so there's a lot of building blocks that are being put into place. I think that the challenges of the budget are real, but they can only be settled via concerned citizens of the town. And we don't really, I shouldn't use the word settle, we make recommendations based on thorough discussions that we have with all of the various town departments and have had for several years. As many years as I'm saying any of the people that have actually sat on this board, it goes back that far. So yes, we have 2 slots open as alternates, and anyone that's interested should reach out to any of us. If you know any of us, or the town administrator, or anyone in town hall can direct you to us, so.
Yeah, and speaking of volunteerism, it's not a transactional thing. You may not understand what you get out of it for a while. There were many nights I spent on the high school building committee. The reward is, it took 6 years, but when I drive by that building, I know why I spent that much time. So it may not always come fast, it may not always come instantaneously, but you will be rewarded for your volunteerism, should you choose to do it. I mean, in many, many different ways.
Yep.
So step up. It's fun.
Whether it's this board or any other board, I know that it's appreciated by the town and residents. So the meeting minutes,
Do we have to vote on the minutes?
Yep, I had made a small change that I discussed with Melissa, and that was just about the Bagnell School plumbing project. And that was,
We were just gonna clarify that the water fountains would be using the existing line from the addition.
Yep.
And then to strike the last line
yep,
in the paragraph.
So I move we accept the September 21st Finance Board minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
any other further discussion?
No.
No, so we can vote on that.
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you, Melissa.
Great job.
She writes great minutes, doesn't she?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's like you were there.
They plan the next meeting and agenda. The next meeting would be set for, fortunately, it's the week before Thanksgiving, so we don't have any anticipated conflict there. So, November 16th would be the next meeting. And while we're at it, we should probably, we do placehold the third Wednesday of the month. And we usually just verify it a month in advance. But I would say, since the busy holiday season is coming up after that in December, we should probably also confirm December 21st as the next two meetings, if that works for everybody. Then we'll hold both of those. And any other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting? I'll make a shameless plug for Pumpkin Fest on there. So our town administrator has brought back Pumpkin Fest this year. We haven't had it for the last few years due to COVID. And not having a town administrator. So Pumpkin Fest is going to be on October 26th from 4:30 to 7:30. There's been a few people that have been helping Rebecca pull that together, and it looks to me like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. 4:30 to 7:30, kids wear costumes, and whoever can show up. There's also going to be, there's a lot, look at the website, there's postings about it. And on, where else? The website.
Well, and the link that Rebecca created to make sure if you want to drop off a pumpkin, you fill out that. We'll
Yeah.
send you a number, make sure you get in the contest and.
Pumpkin carving contest. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of community involvement. So, anything else?
I have one exciting thing to inform the board, is that we just received notice that we were successful in our Community One Stop grant. So we will be receiving $191,000 for a feasibility study for 150 Center Street. So stay tuned for some more information about that.
Congratulations. Is this one grant that you had applied for once before and then
No,
came back? No, this is
new
a different
grant.
one.
Yep, this is under mass development, it's site readiness. I worked with the town planner on putting this together. So it was definitely a labor of love. It was a good solid 6 months of Annie and I going back and forth with multiple drafts, taking things from older applications and taking what we had from our master plan and things of that nature. So we're very, very, very excited, and we really hope that we can present something that the town has an opportunity to look at and figure out whether or not they want to see anything specific done with that property.
Congratulations to you and to Annie. I know that was a lot of work, so that's exciting.
Yeah, very
It's
exciting.
exciting. And we would love to see that large piece of land do something,
Have some use,
use.
more than just kind of stargazing at night.
With the coyotes.
Or at least get off of our books.
Yep. Yep, yep. So good. That's good news. Congratulations. Very exciting. And that must be it. I mean, you can't, that's the end of the news, because you're not gonna top that.
That's pretty big news in
It's
my
pretty
book.
big news. I'm saying, yeah, you
I'm sure
can't
we'll
top
find
it.
something else, come on.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anything? No? Motion to adjourn? No?
I'll make a motion at 6:42 PM to adjourn the meeting.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.